Everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Cummings?
Here.
Ms. McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Spencer?
Here.
Mr. Taser?
Here.
Mr. Sutton here. Mr. Wishbarth?
Present.
Mr. Palmer?
Here. Next is the agenda and/or additions. I just have a couple of things I would like to add, if we might. On the subcommittee reports, the EIT was left off that list. I would like to include the EIT on there. I will give a brief report on that. And possible appropriation requirement. We're going to need an appropriation relating to the, I believe, for the water main replacement.
When we get to that particular, I have some suggestions for that.
Okay, we'll deal with that when we get to it then.
Yes.
Okay.
I have one also. I just have a handout from the Regional Housing Partnership that I was, the board appointed me to that. So I just have a handout about that.
So will that come under your planning commission report?
Well, this is actually under the board had approved me to attend a regional, as a representative to the Regional Housing Partnership.
Okay.
Through MISTA, and I have a handout
So
about that meeting that I attended.
Again, that's under the subcommittee reports?
Subcommittee report.
Okay. All right. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the additions presented.
I'll support that, Palmer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Wishbarth?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next up, we have a presentation of our 2022 audit.
First off, I'm going to go the audit in charge of the Township of Oscoda's audit. And first and foremost, I also want to say it was great working with the township. Thank you all for your flexibility in scanning in the audit documentation for us to perform the audit remotely. We greatly appreciate that. So we'll get started here. If my clicker will work, hold on a second. So the first thing I want to point out is the audit opinion paragraph. It's arguably the most important section of the audit, and it's on page 1 if any of you are following along with the actual copies. We issued an unmodified opinion for the Township of Oscoda over their financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance the township can receive. A few other positives to point out from the audit is there were no deficit fund balances, and there were also no major budget deficiencies that needed to be reported to the state. And the next slide some financial highlights, which are on page 6 of the audit report that I want to point out, are the township's fund balances across all governmental funds as of 2022 were about $8.4 million, an increase of roughly $1 million compared to the prior year. General fund ending fund balance at the end of 2022 was $4.042 million, an increase of roughly $667K. An unassigned fund balance of $4.034 million is approximately 122.5% of general fund annualized expenditures and transfers out. Please note that this is well above the GFOA recommendation of anywhere from 17 to 25%. And the next slide is a visual depiction of this ratio increasing since 2019. So just another positive to point out there. Now, this statement is the comparative statements of net position on page 9 of the audit report. I know there's a lot going on that slide, but some of the significant changes I just want to go over from the prior year include total cash and investments, which increased about $1.2 million. Largest reason for this change is the increase in long-term debt and the acquisition of capital assets in the fiscal year. Capital assets not being depreciated increased by about $8.5 million due to the construction in progress of the water main extension and sanitary sewer system improvement projects that took place during the year. And capital assets being depreciated net decreased by about $2.1 million due to disposal and sale of multiple buildings. And this statement is on page 10 of the audit, and it's the comparative statements of activities. So again, just some of the biggest and significant changes to point out are operating and capital grants and contributions increased by about $329,000 and $3.8 million respectively due to the township receiving one-time grant funding for various water main extension projects, and they also spent their ARPA funding during 2022. Charges for services increased by about $307,000, primarily due to an increase in volume of utility bills by 18% and an annual increase of 2% to utility billing fees. And lastly, public safety expenses increased by about $557,000 due to a change in defined benefit pension plan during the year. The very last slide, this is on page 63 of the audit. This is the schedule of changes in the township's net pension liability. So the township's net pension liability has gone from 62% funded to 57%, and we mostly blame the poor market returns in 2022 for this downfall, and we're just hoping that that changes in 2023. That's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you. Any board members? Ms. McGuire, you are actively involved in the audit. Do you have any questions for him or comments? Or?
The last slide on the pensions, my question is with the, what you were saying for the percent, does that affect every municipality across the board, or is it just us?
Or you're talking about the investment?
Right.
Market performance would affect every entity or government. Yep, correct.
Anything else?
You guys looking at me?
I have a question.
You're probably the most involved with the audit. I just thought maybe you had some questions or comments or
I have a question.
mentions how it
Those guys
went.
can go first, and I probably will
Okay,
have more.
Mr. Westerbark.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So we're starting with, okay, sorry. I thought you were,
Okay,
you were
I'll start
asking
down here.
everybody, so
I'll
go ahead,
start down
Steve, I'm
here.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so normally in our prior audit results, we received the letter that is actually submitted to the state, but I didn't see that in this packet. Has that
There-
letter been provided to us?
That's been provided to the township. If I believe that I'm talking about the same letter that's in the prior audit report, I would
Yes.
have to see the exact letter, but there is a letter with
Yeah.
the results or possible findings that was provided to the township.
That was provided?
Yes.
Oh, then I guess why wasn't it included in the packet?
I had assumed that would be with the audit presentation itself.
I got it, okay.
But
Well,
I will send it out,
Yeah, please.
because I had to send it back to the auditors. So that's why I assumed it would be.
Oh, got it.
And happy to answer any questions about that too, once it's
Yeah,
been
it's
received.
No,
right.
it's just
It's in
it
the
usually
lab.
provides detail about what the findings were. This was obviously a
That's
really
where my
good
questions
presentation.
are going to be stemming from.
Page 78.
I'm sorry, what are you saying?
The findings start at page 78, and that's where my questions are going to be stemming from.
Oh, I see. When I looked for it, I
Thank you.
didn't see it.
I didn't have it memorized to what page.
Should have been
Yeah,
in your
yeah, yeah.
basket.
Yeah, I didn't get it today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Nope, so there you go if you want to use it.
Thank you, appreciate it. Page 78.
You're
No,
welcome.
that's F and V.
And this.
Oh, I got it. I see.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Mr. Sutton?
I don't have it.
Mr. Westerbark?
Yeah, I just have a question. Starting with page 78, I see the findings. We
Yeah.
still have the, the repeats
Yep.
that have been there for forever,
Mhm.
I would say. And then one new one that's not a repeat, but it's with the grant compliance. But I think going back 3-4 years ago, we had the similar one. where
Okay.
We didn't have the policy updated. I don't remember the year, but I know it was called out before.
Okay.
But in those instances, and even on your title page for the report, you mentioned a corrective action plan,
Yes.
but it references it the corrective action plan have for each finding, but I can't find the corrective action plan.
So the corrective action plan is new because the township was required to undergo a single audit. And the corrective action plan just includes the same verbiage from that letter with those findings that you're reading.
Okay.
I mean, happy to provide that, but I don't,
Yeah, I would like to have that.
yeah, we can definitely provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Taser?
Nope.
Question? Ms. Ware, anything else?
I just mentioned that we did speak with Kevin the other day, Josh, myself, and Tammy, and went over the page from 78 on with the findings and different things to see, because he suggested different things with the internal controls. And so we asked for specific examples of what we can improve on or what we can work together on to make it better, and he gave us some good ideas and some of the things we have in place that we're gonna tweak them a little bit, and so we were good to go. And as far as the federal one, we just passed the policy a couple meetings ago, so that one's already taken care of.
Okay.
I would only ask that we make the letter publicly available, like we have in all prior years, and that would be for us, not you. So that would be something that we should include this. We should have included it with the board packet, because we always have, and because it contains more information than what we just heard from the accountant. CPA, I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
So, yeah, I would ask that we include it, because this is exactly what I was looking for.
Well, doesn't this get posted on this?
It's on, it is in the packet.
Okay, yeah.
It should be posted on the website as well.
You're saying this is
After
in the
this
packet?
meeting.
I looked, I didn't see it.
It should have been.
Oh, I got it, okay, got it. All right, thank you. All right.
I don't have any questions. As you mentioned, the audit was done remotely,
Correct, yep.
and from what I've gotten from our treasurer and clerk, it went well. So I guess we can expect this will be the standard from moving forward?
That, it is kind of the standard moving forward, if that's, you know, what you guys prefer, but it is kind of what we push as a firm. It's just more efficient that way. It seems to be easier for both parties. So if the client agrees, we do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin, can you update I know it's not really a question about the audit, but
Yeah.
the board had voted to test the tax account. Can you give
Oh,
the
yeah.
board an update of what we discussed?
Yes,
Okay,
so
good.
that is still in the works. So basically, we were just trying to get the audit done and submitted to the state on time, and we fell a little behind there, so we haven't finished the tax disbursement testing. The plan is to have that final report, or it's going to be like an agreed-upon procedures letter with the results by August, I think 11th is the date we agreed on. So tentatively, that's the date we are expecting to finish that and provide that letter to the township.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good, thank you very much.
If there are no other questions, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Presentation.
Thank you, Kevin.
Right at you like, I know, right?
Yeah, I know, I'm like, yeah, it's good.
I thought it was funny.
Next up is our first public comment. For this public comment, if you please fill out a card and state your name when you come to the podium. Do we have a card?
Yes, we have one.
One?
Deborah Rout, and it's regarding the water main replacement Holiday Inn Express.
Ms. Roush?
All right, Deborah Rauch. I just wanted to say that I saw that in the packet, and I also talked to Mr. Palmer last week about it, about how now you guys have discovered that the water situation for the hotel isn't adequate, or there was a mistake made, or I think when he first told me, he said that the engineer had made a mistake. Well, the township engineer had made a mistake. So I'm just, everybody knows that the hotel is one of my passions here about, you know, I was totally against it. I thought it was rushed through. And this seems to be another instance where a mistake or not taking your time and doing this correctly is going to cost the taxpayers money. So it looks like we're going to have to pay at least $40,000 towards this, which I don't understand why we're paying it, why the hotel isn't paying it. If it's for their water, for the hotel, why we have to chip in to do this. The Oscoda Township taxpayers and residents and part-time residents are paying enough in water bills. Our water bills have increased significantly over the last couple of years, at least mine have. And I'm just wondering why, this is going to fall on us again. This is what I was worried about when this hotel deal was done. It was done so quickly and didn't seem to be a lot of things that were investigated and done, properly. So here we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that the only comment card?
Yes.
Next up is the consent agenda. We have the regular meeting minutes from July 10th, the policy subcommittee meeting minutes from July 11th. Any comments or questions on either one of those? Then we have the finances, the payment of bills, the prepaids for July 25th in the amount of $87,337.57. Check run for July 18th of $60,894.77. And the check run for July 19th for $3,704.15. And then the investment report. Any questions, comments on any of those?
Do we also include the, at least by verbal reference, the email from Jane about the reconciliation that balanced, the email she sent today?
Oh, Jane?
Yeah, is that involved in any of this discussion?
No,
No.
we don't normally include that. This is just authorizing paying the bills
And the investments, yeah.
and the investment.
Update. I do have a few quick comments on the
Okay,
investments.
yeah, I was going to comment on that, but go ahead.
Okay, so Kelly Brown had asked at a previous meeting, and I told her that the investment report for the quarter would be coming up, and so just wanted to give a little update and try to answer her questions too. I had brought up what our balance was for the investments back in September of 2020, and it was $8.8 million approximately. And this year's June quarter for 2023 is at 5.8. And so she was wondering about the difference between the two. So after updating and taking a look at it, there's quite a few of the water projects that I moved money for the cash flow out of the investments into our water fund for the sales of different things that we had to pay up front and then wait to be reimbursed. And then that way, now like for instance, DWRF, we closed that account out and we had a balance left of $655,000. So that's a part of that money that we were using. So I'll be able to reinvest that now. We have CWSRF that's going to soon be closing, and that amount's going to be about $315,000 unless we get a little bit more money back in for some of those things that we've already paid for. Also, the extra money that we have generated and different things from the prepaying and stuff, we have about $500,000 in sewer that I can invest and another $500,000 in water that can go back into that. So it's going to be approximately $1.9 million that I'll be able to put back into investments after I confirm it with Tammy, whether or not we need that money for any other projects that are starting or any other other things that they're going to have needed for the budget. So we will be still a little bit short, about $1 million, but there's quite a bit of money in some of the other funds, and as long as Tammy doesn't need it for budgeted items, I'll be able to reinvest that also.
I have a question. Thank you for the report, Jamie. And I'm glad to see that we've got some CDs that are in the 4 or 5% range because of the interest rates going up here. But we've got a couple that are going to mature. One just matured on July 11th, and then we got another one coming up August 6th.
Yep.
So is the plan to, especially that August or the July 11th fund, is the plan to get that into a 6-month to a 1.5-year CD because you can get like 5.5% right now?
Yep, I have already reinvested those and updated them, but because this is a quarterly one, you won't see it on here because it's June.
Good. Okay.
And I did get 5% and 4.5%.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Awesome.
Anything else? Well, I would just like to comment, we talked about it a little bit this morning in our finance subcommittee meeting, spoke with Ms. McGuire. In previous reports, we were lucky if we were getting 1%.
Right.
Generally, it was well below 1%. And like Ms. Wilstar pointed out, we've got a couple that are coming due that I'm sure when she refinances those into something else, it'll be back. So when we can get 4 to 5% on our investments, that's good. If you look at the audit report in there, it has, last year, I believe the interest income that we got was somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $5,000. This year, I believe it was $39,000. So that's just money that we've made on the investments that Ms. McGuire's made with the interest that comes off, as they say, letting your money work for you. That's exactly what we're doing, and it's with the higher interest rates, it makes a big difference. So thank you for doing that. So if there's no other questions, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support, Spencer.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Worcester.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. All right, next is the superintendent's report. I'm sorry, our subcommittee reports. I will lead that off for the airport authority. I've mentioned this before, the Operation Clean Slate, which is where they moved all of the salvage yard from over near Arrow Street over to the old what was that called?
The alert pad.
The alert pad over there. That has been completed. They had to build a new road, put in gates, a lot of work there, and that is complete. That opens up a good deal of land, 10 to 15 acres that can be developed now, along with taxiways and things that can be used by businesses that want to develop in there. I mentioned before, I don't have a lot to report because we didn't have a meeting in July for the airport authority, but just some things that I wanted to remind everybody. Car and Driver was looking to have a speed test on about 30 cars in mid-August sometime. So when we get more information on that, I hope we can get that out to the public so people can come and watch that. I think it should be interesting to see test these cars and see how fast they'll go. They're also planning to pave a good portion of Perimeter Road out there on the airport, which has been needed for a long time. If you ever see the semi-trailers going when they're carrying one of these $1 million engines, they are just snaking along because the road is so rough. They don't want to damage the engines that they're hauling out of there. So that'll be a big improvement when that's paved. And also the newest tenant out on the base is the old Oscoda Power Sports. It was on F41 there next to Burger King.
Right.
They have moved their facility to a larger space in a building out on the airport, and they're leasing a building there. The airport can only lease property. They can't sell any property on the base. So therefore, everything is a lease. And that's all I have from the airport. Mr. Taser, Planning Commission.
Yeah, we have had a meeting since our last report, and we had a special meeting on July the 18th. We approved a final site plan for a 12,480 square foot general retail store on F41. It's a GD Market. So just to recap a little bit, we have a Dollar Tree coming in on US 23. That's been a final approval, and a Big B Coffee. And now a new DG Market. So that's a Dollar General Market. So this is good things. I also, as long as I'm up, I attended the Regional Housing Partnership. So
Well, you're past
this
it,
is
Joe.
really, the partnership is actually run out of Alpena. It's for northeastern, actually northern Michigan. But instead of trying to go through everything, it's a long process that we have to do in a short period of time. So we've been doing Zoom meetings. This is the, what I'm handing out is the latest Zoom meeting of what's going on there, and we have another one coming up in a couple weeks. This project is through MISTA, and Target Alpena is the lead for our area, and I've been assigned to be a part of the Housing Stock Committee. So this goes from Oscoda County all the way up to up by Rogers City. So this is the things that we are working on. We are putting together a information for Lenny Avery, who has been assigned through Target Alpena and MISTA to come together with a plan for housing in our section, so that we get the right attention here. So we've been lacking in that for many, many years, and this is one of the ways that we can address that.
Question. Back to your first, the first announcement. Where's the Dollar General going?
It's a Dollar General Market, and it's next to Tim Galton's old provisioning center over on F41 on the curve.
Okay.
So where that building is, the property just to the north of that, right on the curve.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in a demo, level that, and put in a state-of-the-art market.
No, interesting. Thank you.
That will give us some options in food choice.
Yes, it's a new thing that Dollar General has entered into, and we're lucky enough to be one of the leads on that, so
Interesting.
hopefully it's fresh produce. And
This regional housing, is that for like apartment housing and single-family housing?
this is to address all the housing needs, to identify what all the housing needs are in the entire northeastern Michigan.
Okay, so that would include single-family?
Yes,
and-
yes.
Very good.
And how to accommodate zoning, what part that plays, granting, all of that is included in that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Are they going to dump the current Dollar General building?
Pardon me?
Are they going to move out of the current?
This is in addition.
In
This is
addition
a totally
to?
different kind of store.
Wow.
This is one of their busiest stores in Michigan.
Wow.
Was that
Good for us.
it for your...
That was it.
Next, the ZBA, Mr. Spencer?
The only thing I've got for the ZBA is apparently I missed the last meeting. That was right after the meeting that we thought that there wasn't one for a while. And I've made contact with Nicole and the chair of the board of that board to apologize for my absence, and I made sure that the next ZBA is on my calendar. So I will have an update in August.
Okay, very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to note, the ZBA doesn't meet on a regular basis,
No.
only when they have a case. I think this in June was an exception because that's when they have their election of officers, so they held a meeting even though they didn't have a case. I think that was maybe the confusion. Anyway, the LDFA, Ms. McGuire.
LDFA. A couple of the projects, I think I might have mentioned them last time. We have not had another meeting yet. It's coming up. But the taxway project is 50% done. They start the paving this week and the completion is the end of August. The run-up shelter is underway and they're pouring concrete and preparing the pad. Operation Northern Strike kicks off August 7th. The Navy, Marines, Army, and Air Force participants, and they're expecting KC-135s only for now. The new structure was approved within the airport authority, and it was announced. They elevated Jack and Brenda to new positions, and it realigns the airport to a directorship. So congratulations to them.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
EIC, Mr. Sutton.
At our last meeting, we welcomed Mr. Linderman to the committee from the Planning Commission, and we voted for our committee positions. We also voted on a new meeting time as well in the
And what is that new time?
11 a.m.
On,
Thursday, still on the
Same
same
day,
day.
okay.
Yep.
very good, thank you. The 911 Board, Mr. Spencer.
Same as their last report. Next meeting is, they only meet on even-numbered months, so I don't have a new update since the last one because they haven't met again. So we'll have another one next month.
All right. And the Husser Board, Ms. Klein.
Okay, so at our last meeting, we had more discussion regarding the primary and secondary main designations. We discussed some revisions to the operating standards, and we'll be having an early start to our next monthly meeting at 8:15 to go over those revisions. And we approved some miscellaneous water tower repairs.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is the RAB, Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, so the next Air Force Restoration Advisory Board meeting is scheduled for August 16th. It's once again a Wednesday, like they always are. The details will be coming out in the paper, as it's still roughly a month away. I'm so sorry, not a month, 3 weeks away. As far as other items involving the township, I would have to ask Tammy if there have been any other meetings with the Air Force or any other discussions with them since we last met.
Just the last meeting with you, myself, Mr. Palmer, and Josh was the last meeting I have had with the Air Force.
With the Air Force?
Yes.
I wasn't there at that. I wasn't
You
with
were
the-
on the Zoom.
Oh, that one. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. Fair enough.
That's the only meeting we've had.
Yep,
with
fair
them
enough.
since then.
Good. Yep, that's good. Then there's no further updates.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Yeah.
Engineering report, Mr. Freeman.
Good evening. Engineering report for July, Phase 3 water main project. Caterman Trucking is finalizing the water hookups, and we'll be scheduling the well abandonments for that project. Here, actually, I think they're scheduled to be wrapped up on the service connections the end of this week. Still waiting on the schedule shortly on the well abandonments. And then obviously with the underground work essentially done, they will start cleanup and restoration. And we've been getting a fair amount of calls from residents on that, and we've been updating them on that. Phase 5, Elmer's, they're finishing up their mainline water main work, testing, disinfecting that, and we'll be scheduling their water service hookups here within the next, try to get them wrapped up by the end of August. Phase 6, the Colbath area, we are working on scheduling an advertisement for that here shortly with a bid opening in August, with construction starting up on that in early September. Notices to residents on that will be going out here shortly, and we'll be working on trying to get that project, probably all of the main line in the ground this year with water services, finishing up next spring. The township-wide service line project, finalizing the first draft of the potential residents that are eligible for that. Once we have that finalized and confirmed, that project will be advertised probably mid to end of August, with startup in that mid to end of September. Sanitary sewer system, the pump station project, I think we're pretty much on the home stretch of the punch list items. We did get comments back and from Eagle on the new odor control option, and revisions to that are being made, and that will be the equipment ordered, and that will be installed here shortly. And then obviously we'll be wrapping that project up financially with Eagle and closing out that loan program probably probably the September-October timeframe on that. The 2024 CWSRF and DWRF project plans that were submitted back in May and June respectively. We're still waiting final review and approval on those as far as potential funding for the township. Those for the CWRF should be coming out here shortly. DWRF will probably follow about a month or so behind. Phase 3 trail, contractor is just finishing up some miscellaneous cleanup work, topsoil, a little bit of concrete work, and the amenities, the benches, trash receptacles, signage, they're on order with delivery and installation on those, hopefully by the end of August, which will basically wrap the project up essentially 3 months in advance. So he's made significant progress out there, and things are looking pretty good. We had a progress meeting with him on July 17th, and we'll address wrapping that up here shortly. Continuing to coordinate various issues with F&B operations, looking at the local PFAS and PFAS contamination investigations, because those will have a possible component in the new CWSRF program. Michigan Rural Water is continuing to investigate the system and priority areas for water loss. We have found a couple of key areas that we're further investigating. I guess one of them has been identified as non-water loss as far as entering a manhole structure, and we're investigating the other area, and they're going to continue to focus on the hydrants and the valves and that, and then once we get that wrapped up, then using a correlator to check the actual lines in certain areas that we've identified as concerns. But we are identifying some potential water loss areas, and further investigation is continuing on that. Still waiting from the Planning and Zoning Committee on a work session for the facilities update project to review with WTA. Various projects on the just my general township activities, and Holiday Inn Express site, we'll be talking about that a little bit later on the agenda, and various site plan reviews are underway and working through final site plan approvals and final construction plan approvals on those. So, that's my report.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for me?
Oh, real quick, I noticed that you guys are putting a fence up down along that path in most of the forest area, I understand, but right there where the boat launch is, there used to be a fence there? Or
No.
They added one?
No, that was one of the concerns that Al and Gary brought up, is that during fishing season, basically boats will trailers and vehicles will find any place to park between the parking lot and the road.
Oh, so that fence is to keep them from doing that?
Now we have a trail there that they don't need to park on. So we're putting a fence up on the foot site side of the trail, and then there'll be no parking signs, violators will be ticketed, penalized,
towed,
and
impounded
delineators along the road side of that. So
okay, that's
hopefully that will deter them. We've still had a couple of vehicles actually driving down the trail, so we've got some bollards and stuff that have to be put up to hopefully prevent that. That's the reason for that new fence in that area.
Gotcha. Is it in our, where do we say that it's illegal for them to drive down the road? Is that an ordinance that we passed, or is that, yeah?
Yes,
All right.
it's a non-motorized path.
So we can nail them to the wall for it is my question? I just want to make sure that it's, I don't, they shouldn't be driving down that path. And if
No.
we catch them, then they need
It'll be
to
posted.
get popped for it.
They-
Okay.
I believe you just recently updated your ordinance to allow ticketing and towing and all that good stuff.
Good.
I just had one quick question, Rick, on the various water main extensions. Just a ballpark, what percentage of the residents are hooking up in all the various projects?
We, on 3 and 5, the ones that are ongoing right now, we're sitting at about, won't say 90%, but high 80% totals as far as hookups. And we're getting a few add-ons to that didn't sign up last fall, that now they're, thinking about it and all that, they're actually adding their name to the list. So when it's all said and done, we should be upwards of close to 90% hookups.
And how much time are we giving residents to make that decision? How long do they have to?
Well, the actual individual phases, they have until that phase is complete to make the decision to hook up.
Okay.
Then we do have that water service connection contract after that, so that if there are any ones that decide to come back, I'll say after the fact, we'll be able to catch them in that contract. But then the C2R2 funding expires at the end of 2025. So that is the ultimate. If those people that haven't chose by December 31st, 2025, then that's when the funding is to be used up. And
They will be out of luck at that point. The only reason I wanted to make sure that we're in compliance with the C2R, because there's a percentage they require of residents to hook up to it, and we're
Correct,
well
more than
above,
50%.
well above that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Next up is the Cedar Lake Improvement Board, Mr. Westerbar.
Just a quick update, but there are a few issues. Our last meeting was canceled due to not being able to get a quorum, getting enough people, board members for a quorum. The meeting will be postponed. I'm not sure when. We do have a quarterly meeting schedule that's posted, so waiting to hear that. We did receive a FOIA request from a riparian who is just frankly asking for information from inception of the CLIB. And he's pointed out a number of items that the CLIB is not adhering to, mainly the OMA, Public Act MCL 115 or 15.261, as well as MCL 15-269 on publication of minutes and record keeping at a location where these meeting notices are posted. And being that this is a dual county situation, a dual township situation with Alcona and Iosco, Greenbush and Oscoda Township, and the drain commissioners, these meetings get posted in 6 different places. But the CLIB does not have, as we're supposed to, in the OMA, a location where the records can be reviewed by the public during certain times. So the board is in a severe violation there. That'll be taken up at the next meeting. As well as, I'll say our chairperson has responded on behalf of the board, basically, with an unreasonable cost, in my mind, to obtain these documents. And we will be taking that up at the next meeting. In subsequent emails, the gentleman has asked for a waiver. We will be discussing that. But there's been a few legal opinions as well from Iosco County. They have 2 representatives on the board, both a drain commissioner and a commissioner. And in a legal opinion that was sent to this riparian, they kind of talk out of both sides of their mouths that they have no oversight on the board, but yet they have 2 appointed people. So we have some issues. Again, this is riparian money, so people that are in the special assessment district that have waterfront property are the residents or the property owners that are paying for these activities on Cedar Lake. And I think we need to do a better job of managing that process with the public, because in the end it is public money, as well as the board since inception has not had any bylaws since 1993.
Wow.
Now, in the last year, we've been working on that. We have a couple of drafts, but I'm going to be coming back to this board probably with some serious recommendations before I bring them up with the CLIB. So we're running out of process. That's my update.
Wow,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
incredible.
Next, I have a brief EIT report. Mr. Freeman covered many of the things in our progress meeting. The contractor stated he's hoping to have the path completely done by the end of August. They don't have a long way to go right now. They're finishing up the topsoil and things on the side of the path and sowing seed and those kinds of things. The EIT did purchase a used tractor, and we had a brush that was donated, so we can use that on the parts of the path that are paved, and that'll be a bonus. We are installing benches and trash receptacles on the path. We've had some interest from some residents of wanting to purchase an engraving of some sort on the benches. One of the problems is that any of the benches that are either in National Forest property or on consumers' property, they do not allow any lettering of any kind on benches or anything, so we wouldn't be able to do that. But there are a couple of spots, and what we decided is somebody wants to purchase it, we will find some sort of plaque that we can have engraved, and residents can purchase that to put on a bench if they see fit. Yep, one of the other things I mentioned is putting some bollards at some of the openings where vehicles can get on the path to try and restrict, whether it be RVs or cars or pickup trucks or whatever, because this path with the gravel is very durable. It's very solid, will last a long time. I raised the question at the meeting. Once the top level of gravel was put on there, it needs to have some rain on it to settle the dust and to settle that gravel into the bigger gravel underneath. And we had some rain, however, it was a major downpour. So my thought was that if there were any weak spots in the path that might get washed out, they should show up because of the heavy rains we had just recently. And they said when they inspected the path, there were no areas that were washed out or any problems. So that's a good indication that it is solid and will last for a long time. So that's all I have on that. Mr. Taser, you discussed your housing. So next up is the superintendent's report.
Okay. A new 8-inch water main needs to be designated and installed along the north right-of-way line of River Road from Lake Street to the park entrance. It is estimated that this will cost approximately $85,000 with approximately $9,600 in design and construction engineering costs. Originally, it was thought that an 8-inch main was located down Michigan Street from Lake Street to the parking lot, but that was determined to be inaccurate after an exploratory excavation was completed last fall. After a discussion with the hotel representatives, a request has been made to split the cost of the water main replacement, with the township paying 50% of the cost and the Holiday Inn Express paying the remaining 50%. I would ask that the board consider approving the cost match of 50% for the water main replacement with the Holiday Inn Express. And second part, to amend the budget to be able to do this purchase.
Why would we pay for half of it? Do we need it? Are any of the houses or residents going to be benefited by the expansion of this main?
Yes.
Yes.
Do tell.
Not only the residents down in that area, but also future development for Orchard Beach Park. Oscoda Beach Park, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So it's not just going to benefit the hotel. How is it going to benefit the residents, the residential people that are already there, properties? Better water pressure or
There's
anything?
only what we've determined during the exploratory dig, there's only a 4-inch main that runs down there.
Yep.
So even though there is a hydrant located down there, it's very questionable whether, if irregardless of the hotel, any fire down in there, that 4-inch main is not going to support even fire suppression, fire down in that area.
So who thought it was an 8-inch main?
It was thought it was an 8-inch main by the initial investigations of turning the valves. There's a theory that number of turns on a valve kind of gives you an indication of what the size of the main was. And that was completed at the pre-development process.
So it's not notated anywhere what size that main is, and nobody really looked close.
We did several months of investigation of plans to determine what was down there, and finally it was determined the best way to resolve it was the exploratory dig that was completed last November. And then it was after that that the hotel provided us their final hookup scenario, as far as they now, at that time we didn't know what size service they were going to need, but they got us information that they needed a 4-inch domestic and a 6-inch fire suppression connection.
And an 8-inch will suffice for the 10-inch requirement?
Yes. Because the fire suppression is only obviously if fire is necessary, but yeah, plenty of water pressure down there on an 8-inch main will take care of both the 4-inch and the 6-inch.
So if the hotel wasn't there and we did not put it in there and we left it at a 4-inch, would we eventually have to upgrade it ourselves?
Yes.
Even without the hotel there?
Yeah, in 10 state standards as far as water main is essentially nothing smaller than a 6-inch line providing residential coverage. Just even for potable water, drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
And really, they don't really put 6-inch main in the ground anymore, just based on the product that's available. So 8-inch is really the minimum that the 10 state standards, which is what the EGLE follows.
And wasn't that entire main from the beach park all the way out River Road up to the river part of the grant that we got from the Peters office to replace?
Yes, that main and other of those inadequate lines within the township down in that area are included in that grant.
Because aren't those some of the older?
Yes.
Some of the older lines which should certainly be contributing or could be contributing to our water loss?
Correct.
Oh, so this is gonna, so our half of this payment would be covered by a grant?
Yes.
Ah! All right.
I have a question. So was there an error made? That's what caused the problem to begin with? Or?
Sounds to me like they just got their engineering specs.
It was a combination of events. One, through the site plan development process, the site developer was asked several times to get us their water needs information, not only domestic but also fire suppression, and that was, we were pushed back on that for several months, actually probably over a year, until we got that information or started to get the information. And in the meantime, we were continuing with F&V operations, trying to determine exactly what was down there. And again, the township's records are old. It's very similar to, especially in that area, as far as adequate or accurate information. So it was determined, like I said, the final thing is, well, let's go out there, and we had actually, John Henry went out and did an exploratory dig in a couple of areas to truly determine what we had. And then once we had that, we still hadn't got the information from the hotel yet until probably January or February of this year.
But they were told that there was an 8-inch.
They were told that there was an 8-inch there.
And
Right.
who exactly told them?
I'm not sure. It came out during the early pre-development meeting, as far as based on the records and that information, and I believe it was it was F&V personnel that did the valve turning and passed that information on.
So we guessed.
Right, but we did qualify it, that was not, and, you know, for sure that further
Yeah, but
investigation was gonna be needed.
But what I heard here from Ms. Roush is she's implicating our engineer, Rick, which is you. And we talked about this at our utility subcommittee meeting today. By the way, Bill, next time we have a subcommittee, we need to add the utility subcommittee to the list for a report out. So, and the information that, you know, we're kind of at least agreement on in the utility subcommittee is we, you know, at the site plan review for the planning commission, information was signed off by F&V that this was down in the ground, and it's not there. So, to me, I've got an issue with the operator misidentifying what was down in the ground, and I want to go after them for this mistake.
Did they sign off on it? He said they made qualifying statements
Yeah,
that...
it was, at the pre-development meeting, it was qualified that further investigation was needed. And like I said, I reviewed the plans and such, and there were plans that said that there was an 8-inch main down, both down, not only river, but also down lake. But all indications are, I mean, there was enough information that kind of, you know, well, we need to further investigate that. Because we had some plans that showed 4-inch, some plans that showed 8-inch. We had some plans along lake between Michigan and river that said there was a 12-inch main, when actually it's a 16-inch main. So, I mean, there was a lot of investigation going on. So I'm not going to, and like I said, it was qualified that further investigation was needed. And also at that meeting, it was asked on the site development, you need to let us know exactly what you need. And if you're gonna have even any on-site booster pumping, that could, whatever we were able to provide, could raise the pressure to what they needed. And again, we did not receive that until January or February of this year. So, I don't think there was a mistake. It just did not, based on the information provided, there wasn't enough evidence of exactly what was under the ground until we did that exploratory dig.
Well, it's not the first time that I've heard about this, because there's another property that was being developed out on the base with the apartments. In the same situation, F&V has told the developer that there was transient pipe there, and after they spent an exorbitant amount of cost, and they did the final hookup or the thing, there was no transient pipe there. So their costs could have been greatly reduced, but that was because of bad information given, and not somebody going to dig a hole and check what's there before they sign off. I got an issue with that.
I have a couple of things I want to state about that, since I sit on the planning commission, and I'm one of the ones that have a vote on these site plans. And I got to tell you, in the last 8 years that I've been on the planning commission, a lot of things have changed. And we put a lot of processes in place to correct our mistakes that we haven't done, to make sure that we're doing things correctly. And the biggest thing that we have done is, a year ago we got RRC certified to be best practices. And in that best practices, there are 130 some different tasks check off that we're supposed to do. And we said we were going to do these things, and we are doing these things. And it's very disappointing to me when I have to sit in a site plan for a final site plan, and that checklist, first of all, there's a pre-development meeting that goes on that Rick and our people go in there to make sure that that checklist is checked. So when it comes to the planning commission, we know all of those boxes are checked. We're not going to give it all on them. We have to do our own research also and ask those questions and check those boxes ourselves. That's our responsibility. But when a professional comes in and says that that box is checked, and we make a vote on a site plan, depending that that consultant is giving us true information, and we find out that it's not true, that's not a good policy there. We have to make sure that these are, because what's going to happen in the future? You want to throw out everything that we just did? No, there's a process. That process has to be followed, and it's not just, I'm not just saying water hookups. I'm talking about The fire chief has to check off things. There are pages and pages of standards for approval for a final site plan. Finally, we have an engineer, which helps us do that. And we on the planning commission depend on his information.
Sure.
To be accurate and true. And we depend on all of that. And when it's not, at least I can point my finger at him and say, hey, you know, you told me one thing, explain this. And Rick's been very, very good. And I'm so glad that he can review these site plans, because when you're talking of multi-million-dollar projects, the Oscoda development's coming in. All of that site plan's coming in is like a $40 million project that they're talking about doing here. I'm not an engineer that can go through all of that stuff. I depend on people like Rick. I depend on F&B to give them correct information. I depend on the fire chief. I depend on the police chief. I depend on MDOT. I depend on all of those things, and they're all listed in that pre-development meeting. So this isn't something that is just thrown down on a plate one day and 4 days later we're going to vote on it like we used to. That's not the way this works. We have a pre-development meeting that this stuff should be worked out in advance, and only a final site plan should come to us, that all those boxes are checked. So I'm very passionate about this right now.
Sure.
It bothers me that this happened. And who is really responsible for that? Why are we even asking the Holiday Inn Express to pay anything? It's our fault. We didn't do our due diligence. We got to get better at that. So if this is covered in a grant, then we should have it covered in a grant. So I probably spoke too much, so sorry.
And Rick, I just want to qualify. I see everything you're doing for the township, and I'm glad you're here.
Absolutely.
You're putting some process in place. You're getting it. You're a double check for us, and you're doing the right thing. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
So just to reiterate, even if the hotel wasn't there, there's no hotel, it's an empty lot. We are going to have to run an 8-inch main down that road.
I don't think so.
Well, then I guess it's nice that they're offering to pay half, isn't it?
Do I have a motion?
Can we have F&B, even though it's covered by a grant, we could use that grant money for something else? Should we not ask F&B for the cash back? Or our half, or?
I want to make that a condition, that we go after that.
I didn't hear what you
That's
said,
going to be
Steve.
my
Can you repeat
comment.
that?
I'd like to make a comment that I would like to pursue F&V for these costs. They're our operator. They gave bad information at the beginning of this process, and regardless, going forward, I want to go after them for this.
And my other question is, has this happened with other people? I know you mentioned you talked to a couple people. And what kinds of consequences is that going to be if we pay for this now and we haven't taken care of them and they've had big costs? Are they going to be coming to the board? Are they going to not be happy? Are we going to end up in any type of litigation? I mean, that's something I think that we need to look at too if we don't pursue F&B to take care of it.
I think that in the contract, we need to see if there's a liability insurance in there.
This would probably qualify as errors and omissions, wouldn't it?
Well, I would entertain a motion to prove we need to get approval to replace this main. It's going to take some time for the engineering and the installation, so we don't want to hold up progress on the hotel for too long.
I would move that Oscoda Township agrees to split the cost with installing the 8-inch water main on River Road to service, in part, the Holiday Inn Express and Suites, and not to exceed $47,300. I think that was half of what the initial cost was, if I'm not mistaken.
We have to include the engineering cost as well.
Okay.
That's included. And
That's
total,
included.
That's included in that total?
47.
Okay.
My question is where do we get that funding from?
That's a great question.
Where does that come out of?
Where is that going to come from?
So just as a side note, the grant funds can only be used on infrastructure improvements. Just so that's clear.
It would come from the grant?
The grant funds that we were referring to through Senator Peters are only for infrastructure improvements.
Which this
Okay.
is.
And this-
So that would call for that would call for, that grant would cover the cost in whole. We could reimburse the hotel if they agreed to the 50% split, maybe?
For this block, this project will be split, so the grant is a $3 million grant for, I'll say, essentially the entire downtown area, and then River Road out and going underneath the river. So
Okay.
that's the component on it. As a backup, because we didn't know really where, I mean, we didn't know if we had the Peters grant. We also included this area and others in that last 2024 DWRF plan. So I'll say it's double covered as far as that goes. So, but the Peters grant and the drinking water revolving can only be used for water main improvements. And also the engineering and construction observation costs and all that stuff associated with it. And since you went through a qualification-based process, that's all grant eligible. So since they look at a local share, and you can use the fact that the Holiday Inn is going to contribute 50% of this one block, you can use that to your advantage as a local share commitment. Doesn't have to come from the township, it's coming from a private development, but it's still a local share commitment, which you will have in this grant throughout it, that you're going to show that you've committed local funds to some degree into it.
So DWRF?
So the DWRF grant is what we're talking about?
No, it's the Peters one is, now that
Yes.
we know that we've got the Peters grant is what we're going to use in this area, but
So
not
that's where
just.
the money's
not-
coming from? So that's where the money's coming from?
Correct.
So when I made a motion not to exceed the 47,300, and I wanted to state where that money is going to come from,
Correct.
it would come from that grant.
It's an EPA community grant, is what it's actually called.
EPA community grant.
EPA community grant.
So is this going to be a reimbursement? Do we pay that money up front and then get reimbursed by that
Yes,
grant?
we have gotten verbal commitment from our EPA coordinator out of Chicago that we can ask for reimbursement for expenses incurred.
Okay.
So,
And we won't have to pay any of that back.
correct, it's a grant.
Support, Spencer.
Well,
And I'd
just
like-
for a second here. So you mentioned that we also have another option in case that doesn't come through, correct?
If it, again, based on the estimates, we're all at the mercy of the contractor's bids. So if our project plan exceeds 3 million, we do have the DWRF to cover the difference.
Okay, good. I would just suggest that we provide both options in the motion so we don't have to come back
I would
and deal
agree.
with this. Thank you.
You want
So there's
to
two
restate
different
it?
ways to fund this. If one doesn't go through, then we can go back with the other grant that was you just spoke
Exactly.
of.
Yep.
So you amend your motion to include
So I
the
amend my
DWRF.
motion to include both options.
But let me make one, is the township will have to pay this money up front and then
Upfront,
ask for
reimbursement.
reimbursement.
Yes.
And the reimbursement might not come until the fall of this year or early 2024.
Are you including anything else in the motion?
I would like to add, Bob, would you amend your motion to authorize township administration to pursue cost recovery through F&V?
Yes,
As the third option, or as the
No,
first
part of
option?
the
As-
motion.
as a
Not
motion.
as an
Or was
option.
it?
Oh,
So you'd have to.
Wait a minute, I didn't get that. Can you repeat that?
I asked that we include,
Yes.
that we authorize, we're going to end up going through with this if we pass, but part of that motion would be we authorize township administration, i.e. our superintendent, to pursue cost recovery for these expenses with F&V.
And that where I got lost was as the primary source, or is that, where's the cost recovery fit into this? We're getting the money from.
It's a parallel path, Tim. We're not going to count on that to go ahead and fund this. We're going to fund it initially, but I want to make sure that we pursue cost recovery for F&V for these funds that we're expending.
What would
Use
we
the
be
grant money for
expending if
something
we,
else.
pardon?
And then be able to use the grant money for something else.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying.
I don't even know how to reword that motion at
Yeah,
this point.
good luck.
There is 2 grant possibilities plus for reimbursement, plus looking at authorizing the superintendent to pursue a
Possible cost recovery
A
for
cost
these
recovery.
expenses with F&V.
That pretty much covers it. You've got both grants and
both grants
F&V.
and a possible cost recovery.
Okay. Is everybody clear on the motion?
Do we still need a line to pay from, or?
Yeah, we still need to pay it out. We still got to pay
Because
for
then
it
it would
right
be,
now.
then you would say to pay for that
That'll be a
line
separate
with
motion. That'll be a
reimbursement.
separate motion.
Allocation.
That has to be a
Allocation
separate
motion.
What's the amount? I have the cash somewhere.
47,300.
Do we have an account that has that much in it?
I think the water one does. If this is correct.
Is this correct, Ms. Klein?
Which part?
Since you're in charge of budget,
I was hoping to get permission from the board to sit down with Jamie so we could go over and find where because it's not something I could just pick out.
okay.
So I would like to be able to sit down with Jamie and see what we can come up with, if that's possible to make that into a motion.
She's looking right now if there's something, but she'd rather wait.
Well, I know Josh and I talked about 236 has funds we could borrow from.
That 236?
No, you don't.
We don't.
Not the cash line, you don't.
Oh, in the cash.
Not right now anyways.
So we would have to make a motion to move funds. Is that right? Later?
To that one?
Yeah,
You just have to
Just give
appropriate
us
it.
permission to look for it and
Yep.
take care of it that way.
Okay. Well, we have a motion on the table for approving the water main.
Jeremy, are you still going to support that?
There's
I
a
will
motion
s-
by Mr. Taser, support by Mr. Spencer.
I will support it, yes.
Okay.
And I'm glad that we found some alternative ways to pay for it, but I would like to reiterate one more time that this main had to be done whether the hotel was present or not,
I agree.
Yes.
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
There it is. Okay.
All right.
Support,
we have-
Spencer.
We have a motion by Mr. Taser, support by Mr. Spencer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Teaser,
Yes.
Mr. Wurstabarth,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes, Mr. Spencer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes, motion passed. Next, we need a motion to make an appropriation to cover this for the time being,
Yes.
and whatever fund this comes from, whatever money, however we recoup the money, whether it's the grant funding, the DWRF, F&V, whatever the source is, then that would be put back in the fund that we take it from.
Yes.
Is
Correct?
it coming from the general fund? Is that what
Yes.
it's- Yeah?
Be the general fund for the time
No?
being.
Oh, she's giving me the no.
Well, it depends on where it comes from, honestly, whether it's general fund money or not,
It depends on where it comes from for whether it can be general fund money?
where it's available.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What's available in the general fund, yeah.
In any
Yeah.
of the water and sewer or enterprise funds, so.
Yeah,
they're
whatever.
different. Yeah.
So I would make a motion to have our treasurer and clerk and superintendent sit down to make this appropriation to cover these costs moving forward.
Support Cummings.
Are they going to bring it back to the next meeting for us to vote on that appropriation? Because I think we have to allow or approve it, don't we,
We do.
at the board level?
Yeah,
We do.
we can approve that at the next meeting.
Yep.
Would you amend your motion to state that it will be brought To us at
that
the
it will
next
be,
meeting.
and that it will be brought to the next meeting for approval.
Thank you.
Still support.
Sorry, been getting yelled at for not being
We have a
specific.
motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call, please.
You made the motion?
I
Mr.
did.
Palmer.
Cummings, support. Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Worcester?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next up is the E-Z-GO cart purchase.
Right. Your packet contains a memo from DPW Supervisor Bill Hamlin requesting the purchase of a 2016 used E-Z-GO golf cart from Titan Golf Cart Incorporated. This unit has a gas fuel injected motor and has been well taken care of, as you can see from the pictures provided. The company will also be installing a utility box and lights included in the total cost. This unit will satisfy the capital improvement item for 2023 for DPW in the amount of $5,000 and was originally budgeted for in the amount of $8,500. I would ask the board to consider approving the purchase of the 2016 E-Z-GO as requested by the DPW supervisor in the amount of $5,000 to be paid from Fund 101-751-980-000.
Questions?
I was looking at the pictures on there. Those tires are bald. Can we add some tires?
I'll have to talk to Mr. Hamlin, but we have a budget of $8,500, so if it needs to come back for tires.
Just as part of the purchase price. Hey, we're gonna buy it for $5,000, raise the price, put some new tires on there so that we don't have to, so Mr. Hamlin's all set.
I can have him ask.
What?
I thought the tires look good.
Did you? They looked awful bald in that close-up picture I saw. The edges were all right, but the middles of them were pretty worn down. Maybe it was just the angle. I could be wrong.
Let me see here. Wow, looks like tread to me. I mean, they're not brand new tires.
No.
Those are driving on a golf course, so,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't wear the tires a whole lot.
No.
At some point, possibly we'll replace the tires.
Yeah.
You don't want to put new tires on there?
No, we want to use up the ones that are on there.
I did. Okay. All right, fine. Well, I'll make a motion to approve $5,000 expenditure to purchase an E-Z-GO golf cart used for the DPW supervisor from from Titan Golf Cart Inc. to be paid from Fund 101-751-980.000.
Support, Sutton?
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Worcester?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is the Phase 5 water main.
Your packet contains the fifth pay request in the Phase 5 water main project in the amount of $224,789.99, leaving a total of $889,445.20 remaining on this project. I would ask that the board consider approving the fifth pay request from Elmer's Crane and Dozer in the amount of $224,789.99 to be paid from the C2R2 funds after reimbursement is requested and deposited into the township's account.
Questions? Comments? Is there a motion?
I'd move to approve paying Elmer's Crane and Dozer in the amount of $224,789.99 to be paid from the C2R2 grant funding after reimbursement is requested and deposited into the township account.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Worcester. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Worcester?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
I did you out of order. Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, can we Palmer up the top?
All right, next we have some row invoices. First one.
Do we need to go through them, or are we just doing motions?
I think we have to do each one.
Yeah.
Yep, what we
Yeah.
usually do.
So the first one is invoice 109192.
I'll make a motion, we approve invoice 109192 in the amount of $44,127.50 to be paid from 101-751-880-572.
Support?
We have a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Westerbarth. Roll call, please.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Worcesterbart?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes,
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is invoice 109233.
Make a motion that invoice number 109,233 in the amount of $19,802.50 be, or for the water system improvements Phase 3 to be paid from C2R2 after reimbursement has been requested and deposited into the township's checking account.
Support, Sutton?
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
yes,
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Worcesterbart?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is invoice 109246. This is for the wastewater pump stations.
I'll make a motion, we approve invoice number 109246 for wastewater pump station improvements in the amount of $1,190 to be paid from CWSRF after reimbursement.
Support?
We have a motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Westerbarth. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
yes,
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Worcesterbart?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is invoice 109247 for as-needed services.
I'll make a motion that invoice number 109,247 for as-needed services in the amount of $2,765 even be paid from account number 101-299-821.000.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cummings?
yes,
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Worcesterbart?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is invoice 109248.
Make a motion that invoice number 109,248 for Oscoda Township 2024 SRF applications in the amount of $510 be paid from CWSRF after reimbursement is made and the funds are deposited into the township account.
Support?
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Westerbarth. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
yes,
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Worcesterbart?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next is invoice 109292 for work on the Phase 5 water main project.
I'd make a motion that invoice number 109,292 for water system improvements in 2022 in the amount of $15,640.00 be paid from C2R2 after reimbursement has been requested and the funds deposited into the township account.
Support, Sutton?
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Sutton. Roll call, please.
Mr. Worcesterbart?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
yes,
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. Next up, we have the tip-top screw and Oscoda Plastics wastewater.
Yes, we were contacted by Tip Top Screw. They reached out to the township. I know they reached out to the clerk's office as well in regard to whether there was an individual industrial pretreatment permit for that facility, and no such permit exists in the township's records or in Eagle's records, at which time their environmental consultant reached out to the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy in regard to the waste that they were discharging to the Oscoda Township sewer system. They have voluntarily stopped discharging their processed wastewater. They're still currently discharging the sanitary waste from their employee break room and bathroom and whatever, but their processed wastewater is being hauled off by a hazardous waste disposal company. I would like to add the caveat that I had done a thorough review of the records. They have had several non-domestic user surveys in the past that were done by both United Water and FNV as part of the PFAS investigation, at which time they did not state that they had any coating operations on site, so either those were filled out in error or someone misrepresented what was being done there. But anyway, that their environmental consultant did report this. And so they would like to recommence having the ability to discharge that waste to the township sewer, because obviously having it hauled off is very expensive. However, now that this has been raised and elevated to the level of Eagle, Eagle has stated that the township would need to implement an industrial pretreatment program in order to accept this waste, which would require a lot of record keeping and testing, a maximum allowable headworks loading study, a lot of other environmental activities that would have to be done in order to prove that the township's wastewater system could accept that waste without jeopardizing your ability to land apply biosolids. If you had to have the lagoons cleaned or have any other pass-through interference in the effluent of the wastewater treatment plant. The cost to do so would be approximately $60,000 to $80,000 in order to pursue that path of actually implementing a comprehensive industrial pretreatment program for this one individual user. Now, the pretreatment program, if there were future development that needed to occur and there were other industrial users that wanted to then hook into the township system, a lot of that background information would be available, so there's value to having that program, but at the time right now it would be for this specific user. And then there would also be a cost to annually implement that. There's requirements for doing testing. They have to self-report. We have to validate all their record keeping. It all has to be reported to Eagle, etc. So there'd be ongoing costs. Now, per the Clean Water Act, the township can pursue the industrial user for reimbursement for the costs that would be needed to develop and implement this program, so that ultimately you would not pay for the whole thing. But I don't know if it would be more cost effective for Tip Top Screw to pay, basically reimburse the township to go through this entire process to implement an industrial pretreatment program, or whether it would be more cost effective for them to continue to haul their waste off site. So that's going to be a discussion that needs to be had with them. We were looking to see whether you wanted to pursue getting a proposal from us that would delineate that more thoroughly, exactly what would be needed and the cost therein. And I did speak with Ms. Klein earlier today and said that at a first step we would reach out to Tip Top Screw and try to get waste manifest from what they're hauling off site and any testing results that they would have, so that we at least have a starting point. But that's the background on that particular situation.
I have a question. So reading the write-up, is it just an e-coding process there, or is it e-coding and plating?
Based on their non-domestic user survey, they have some of both going on. So we would have to do a better refinement of what that process is. We've got some diagrams that they provided, but we would have to do a formal site inspection as part of setting up the industrial pretreatment program and actually categorizing both types of waste and exactly what they would be discharging.
Because if it's plating, all the byproducts off of that are major PFAS family chemicals.
Yes.
If it's e-coating, it's a water-based system. I've been a coating engineer for 30 years. But you have to have a pretreatment facility for that waste to separate the solvents and the solids.
Yes.
before it goes down the drain, and of course, they have to track the water clarity and quality, but do they have a waste treatment system for the just general water-based ecosystem?
They do not that we've seen any evidence of in the diagrams that they've provided. And like I said, we have not pursued doing a formal site investigation at this point in time because of, you know, the needing to bring this to the board for informational purposes and getting some direction. If they do have, even if they do have a pretreatment process, the concerns are not just for PFAS, the concerns are for metals.
Great, heavy metals, yes.
Yeah, and so that, I will say that when the biosolids were land applied in the last lagoon upgrade project in like 15, 16, those biosolids were tested for metal contaminants, and they passed the requirements. So if there are metal contaminants, they may be at a low enough level that ultimately, after going through this process, the township could continue to accept that waste, but now they have to go through the formal step of doing all this background information to satisfy Eagle's requirements for doing so.
So what exactly is Eagle doing with them right now? Because this is a major red flag.
What is Eagle doing with them right now? Basically, that they are hauling off their wastes and that they're only discharging sanitary wastes. You know, I don't know that they would have any ability to do any other enforcement. Normally that comes from the local municipality. You know, part of having an IPP program, you know, has to do with changes that are made in your sewer use ordinance. There was a significant update done with Rowe Engineering a couple of years ago, but there may be more refinements that are needed to formalize an IPP program. And then you have to get that through the entire ordinance adoption and review process as well. So right now they're looking to the township, Eagle is, to say, are you going to pursue doing an IPP program, or are you going to simply tell them that they have to continue to haul off their wastes?
Okay, and then just for the board, just with those distinctions, so if it's an eco process, it is a water-based process. You use electricity to attach to the metal. However, the waste product of that, you still have paint solids that are suspended in deionized water. You have zinc, phosphorus, and nickel, usually, in various quantities. But before any of that waste can be discharged into the public sewer system, they have to have a way to pull or coagulate those solids. And once they do, they'll press them basically into a cake to haul that off. And then they'll treat the water before it goes back in. If they don't have any of that, you know, you have the risks of getting solvents and then some of that activity back in. The E-code is not as bad as plating. You get into plating, you've got heavy metals. That's the PFAS situation, and that's, you know, either one you don't want byproducts going in. But the eco water-based is the lower risk situation. So I'm kind of surprised that they've been doing this.
Yeah.
Apparently right along, yeah. And like I said,
Well, they said that they weren't though, didn't they?
they did say that they weren't,
Yeah.
and that's the thing, is we did do a non-domestic user survey right at the beginning of the PFAS investigation, and it was very specifically directed to those types of activities. PFAS compounds were used in plating situations as a surfactant to protect the metals from vaporizing into the atmosphere. So at the one point, it was done as a safety protocol for the workers that are working in that environment, so they're not inhaling metals, but then discharging it in the water causes all these other environmental issues. And I don't even want to get into what other people on that site might have been exposed to. But basically, they either mistakenly, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt, stated that whoever filled that out, you know, got handed this, here, fill out this form and send it back, didn't know what they were talking about, or that they falsified that information at that time.
And we don't have a process to go in there and verify just because they fill something out. Nobody goes in and checks that?
No, you don't, because that's part of what the industrial pretreatment program does, is it gives you the authority to go in and do those types of inspections. Right now, as it stands, if there is something like this that comes up where the township has concerns about what an industrial user is discharging, it's a code enforcement issue. the operator does not have the authority to do code enforcement. That has to be a direct representative of the township, just like any other code enforcement situation. So the IPP can designate an IPP coordinator that would then be given that authority by the township to do those types of inspections, but we don't routinely go in and do those types of inspections. Now, when we were doing the PFAS investigation, we did do some inspections where they had reported that there was some type of activity going on, and then we actually had, because of the township authorizing us to do that as part of that inspection, you know, that process, go in and do those inspections. But we do not routinely just, especially an industry that's been on site for over 30 years and has never been flagged as being a problematic issue, you know.
So the state regulates, they have a policy and a procedure for all chemicals that come into an industrial site. Everything has to be labeled correctly, correct? But we have nothing that shows what happens to it after it's in the site. So nobody looks at that
Sometimes
from the
that is.
state level, or?
Sometimes that is done as part of a, like a fire safety type of thing. A lot of times the fire department will request that industries provide safety data sheets in regard to the chemicals that are stored on site. They also may be subject to things for industrial stormwater regulations if they are storing things that could potentially cause a spill to, say, a storm drain or something like that. So there are other levels of regulations in site, but as far as the wastewater itself, that would fall under the Clean Water Act, and that would then fall under EGLE, specifically the surface water treatment rules and all those kind of type of things that.
But doesn't Eagle, I mean, because they're in manufacturing processes that use water throughout their facility, don't they have a discharge permit on file with Eagle?
No. No, that's bound by the local entity. This
don't have a
happens more
policy
than you
for
would you would like to think. We are currently working with a situation on the west side of the state where there was a small community similar to this. They had an industry on site, they had a lagoon system, so they don't normally process biosolids like on an annual basis like you would for another type of treatment system. This industry folded up shop, closed their doors, went bankrupt, pulled out of town. Now they're trying to do a process where they're trying to land apply or try to dispose of this biosolids and found that it was heavily contaminated with metals. And now it's going to cost them $12 million to have this disposed of. So that would have been the flag for metal contaminants is when we did the biosolids sampling before the last lagoon project. If there had been high metals contamination or any kind of red flags, that would have triggered an investigation upstream to start looking for the probable source, but that was not the case at that time.
Well, bankruptcy or not, that sounds criminal, but.
It is
yeah.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So, going back to, doing some of the investigations on the base for PFAS, and I guess that sewer line, wastewater line, well, it's sewer out there, right? It's not a storm sewer. So, do we have past reports on what we found and can trace it back to see if there is any contamination?
I'm going to have to look at that whole overall map of where the results are to see if there was PFAS coming from that zone. I know that we did not target them specifically for sampling individually because they did not self-report that they were doing plating.
Well, again, the plating is a very serious one. If they're actually doing plating in addition to e-coating. E-coating can be kind of neutral as long as they're doing the right things. Like they have to have a simple wastewater treatment situation for all their waste products, but if they don't have that, then it's going into our sewer. That's not good.
So this IPP plan that we were talking about, between $60,000 and $80,000 to implement that, that would include, I'm reading in here, the procedural manuals and enforcement response plan.
Yes.
And that would be for any industrial use
Yes.
in our industrial area?
Yes. So that's the thing, like I said.
So other companies can't be, we have a policy now for what's going in, we're going to be checking what's going out through this IPP
Yes.
plan?
So part of industrial pretreatment is that in above and beyond what the current discharge permit requires us to be tested for, you would then start testing annually for all components that are listed as limited substances in your sewer use ordinance. So if the township enacted like numerical limits, like say they had a limit of 10 milligrams per liter for zinc, per se, or something like that, that they would then also be required to test the lagoon influent and effluent for all those constituents that are now part of that IPP limitation for that industry or any other industries. And so that those are part of the cost that would be the $10,000 to $15,000 per year to do that, is not just to test that one industry, but to test everything else as well, because the state requires now that all those parameters be tested for in your entire waste stream.
Well, I personally think that, $80,000 high-end investment in implementing a plan and then $15,000 a year is worth protecting our community from contaminations that we've been haunted with for how many years here in Oscoda?
Or different ones, let's be
Yeah,
honest, right?
or
It's not
more.
even just,
Yeah.
we're not talking just PFAS here, we're talking everything it's not. It's definitely not about,
I can't believe that we haven't had
well,
something in, why is this coming now? We've got an industrial area here in Oscoda for so many years, and this is just coming to us now?
And you also mentioned that Oscoda Plastics on here. Do they use water?
They're
for
part
that?
of the same, they don't, it does not look like they are
It's a family
doing
company.
that, but they're part of the same, business, so that they basically self-reported for both, and that they gave us some simplistic diagrams of their process and some other information that, just is, and also the standard industrial classifications, which was asked for on the previous survey that they did not supply. So those SIC codes should have been on that and would have raised a flag at that time.
So if we set all this up, then we're going to have to, we can't just pick out tip-top screw. So
No.
every industry that's in
Well, what we
Oscoda
would have
Township
to-
is going to be inspected.
Yeah,
for-
basically that, there's gonna be some additional work that's gonna have to be done as part of that process. Elaine Venema, who is the co-author of the memo, and who has also been in charge of the PFAS investigation, that's her area of specialty. And so, to me, I'm just the messenger bringing this to you right now, because that's what she does full-time for a living, is industrial pretreatment and PFAS and those kinds of things that she's an expert in, so.
so I have a curious question about how many different municipalities does F&V work with, just in general, just
I
largest one.
honestly, ballparking it,
Yeah,
probably
please.
50
Fine,
as far as operations,
Fine.
hundreds as far as engineering.
fair enough. And so of those, how many have an ITP, IPT?
IPP?
Thank you.
Well, right off the top of my head, probably 6 or 8 of them do. And we also do work in Indiana where we have IPP programs, which those are directly regulated by EPA
Got it.
in that state, unlike Michigan where EEL has primacy on those.
Got it. So in other words, this isn't something that the majority of your municipalities have?
No. No.
And it's only when something comes up, I imagine, that this is why it's implemented?
Yes.
Got
It is, and so that, that's a lot of times, especially when you're in a situation, like I said, this industry's been on the base probably since the base was decommissioned, in the early 90s.
Yep.
And so, coming into a situation where it's been pre-existing, you don't necessarily have any flags unless you start seeing, like I said, analytical data that says, hey, there's something going on here, let's start going upstream and looking for a source, just like
Sure.
we did for the PFAS.
Right.
I'm in no way insinuating that our industry's been lying to us, especially, they're our industry here. I'm just surprised that we are now addressing a problem that, I worked at General Motors 20 years ago. I was an auditor for some of these very things, and that was 20 years ago that I worked there doing that, and here we are now implementing a plan here. So, like I said, I encourage business and I encourage our industry, but I think it's our responsibility to our citizens to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure things are done properly. Not just putting it on
a company or something like that, we have to make sure we're in charge of the verification of our citizens' health and safety. So I think we need to implement this as soon as possible.
Sure, yeah, Catherine, to your knowledge, was this ever, even before there was ever cause, like there seems to be now, was this ever anything that was mentioned
No.
to the township?
No, and like I said, I went back through all the records that are available, all the way back to the time that the township took over the base sewer system.
Yep.
There was a survey done by United Water early on in that process of, the industries or the businesses that were there.
Yep.
It did not come up as a red flag then. There's
Yep.
nothing on any of the records that exist between the township and Eagle in regard to having a categorical user, because you can have commercial users. And I need to clarify that with every commercial user, industrial user is not a categorical user. A categorical user is someone who has the potential to discharge a toxic compound or something that can cause pass-through or interference in your waste stream. There are many industries that do work that doesn't have any kind of impact on the sanitary waste that is being discharged. So they can do assembly work or many times a lot of other kinds of work. But in this particular case, as Mr. Woosterbarth was mentioning there, that plating and e-coating, that there are materials that are being utilized in the process that either need to be recovered, removed, treated, or et cetera, before they should be discharged to the sanitary sewer. And even under those circumstances, that waste stream needs to be tested to verify that their process is working correctly. And they also have to have waste manifests for all the materials that they're removing from the site, as well as their own safety procedures in place, which, that IPP includes that, what type of spill management they will be doing internally and a lot of other things. So it's a lot deeper than just getting a sample out of their manhole.
There are manufacturing facilities that pump things into our sewer system from other townships. If we set the IPP up in Oscoda, does that give us the ability to police these businesses that are not in our
Yes.
township, as long as they're connected to our sewer?
Yes, it
And
does.
currently, do we have a categorical user notation on the water bills? Or is that something we would have to add so that we could, so that the fees to pay for this program can be properly assessed?
It wouldn't be on their water bills. Basically, it would be outside of the standard utility billing system.
Oh.
That the township would create an industrial pretreatment permit for that specific industry, which states their specific limits that they are allowed to discharge, both volume and concentrations and materials. And then it sets in there what their annual fees are and/or that they are responsible to pay for all the testing that's required, the inspection fees, et cetera, et cetera. So the permit that you would give to them individually lays that all out as how you are going to recover the cost for managing that IPP.
Okay.
And both the state and EPA give you that authority to recover those costs, because they should not be borne by the average residential user. Shouldn't
I
have to
agree.
pay to manage this program. This should all be paid for by the industry.
But on the Clean Water Act, it has to be reasonable fees, right?
It has to be reasonable fees.
So-
You can't get more than what you're, so if you have to sample and send a test in and it costs $500 for that test, and the consultant is coming out and you're paying them $100 an hour to do the sampling and send it, then all those costs would then be sent to them for reimbursement. You can't just arbitrarily charge them, $5,000 for that sample. You have to recover your actual costs of what you are spending.
And that's why it's a permitted process and not
Yes.
part of an enterprise fund.
Yes.
I
And it's
gotcha.
specific per customer at that time,
Yeah.
because through the due diligence period, they're gonna fill out the chemicals that they use, the amount that they use per year, and then it develops the plan on how you have to test throughout the year, and the
Right.
costs of the plan.
But the IPP itself, setting this up, gives us the ability to go into other
Correct.
manufacturing
The process-
facilities and
this
say,
sets
hey,
up the process.
what's that black gunk going down the drain, and why don't you have a permit for it?
The other thing, I want to put a positive spin on this, is that is also be beneficial for any new industrial development coming in, knowing that we have one of these.
Oh, yeah.
Would be a plus for future industrial development, knowing that we do have an industrial pretreatment program system.
Surprised it's not part of the the RRC.
I know, well, maybe it is.
Well, I would
one
have
of the
to,
tick box
I would
that-
have to assume it's much cheaper for them to pay the fees for for an IPP than to pay to haul their waste away, like
Yeah,
they're doing now.
I would think so.
Yeah, like I said, I have no idea how much that is and what the return on investment would be for them to have to, provide the funding to cover this development cost. So, and like I told Ms. Klein, we should at a minimum reach out to them with the authorization of the township to request, their waste manifests since they've been self-hauling, making sure that that's being hauled off-site, so we have an idea of what the volume is, and if they had to have any testing done for the waste hauler, those records, so that we have a little bit better idea of what exactly is going on there, because that would be a step in the right direction. And then, if Elaine puts together a formal proposal to do the IPP now, and I don't know what Rose's capabilities are. I mean, they're your township engineer also. If they have anyone that would be able to develop that as well, if you wanted to get more than one proposal to do that, or put together a request for proposals, or however you wanted to manage that, that would be entirely up to you. But, with us being in the operations and also doing the PFAS investigation, and being that we do have an in-house expert, that is something that we can provide as a service for the township.
One more question. You state in here that the program implementation is likely to cost between $10,000 and $15,000 per year. Is that amount part of what's reimbursable, or is this
That's
something more?
all of it is reimbursable.
Okay, got it. So this is exclusive of the tests you referred to.
Well, that would be the ongoing testing for every year would be part of that $10,000 to $15,000 ongoing expense. There's testing that is also part of that $60,000 to $80,000
Right,
initial cost. So that's more comprehensive testing.
right.
But then every year you would have to do additional testing, additional record keeping, additional reporting, and that ongoing cost of $10,000 to $15,000 a year would be then reimbursed by the industry on an annual basis.
Right, so let's say we discover as we embark down this road and we find that there's another manufacturing plant that qualifies, that now has to become part of this program. So does that mean that those costs go up? Or that's, I'm trying to understand what these costs are.
I think the 68,000 would not go up.
No, 60 to 80 is just
The 10 to 15,000, like I said, it would depend on the number of samples and the parameters that are required. So,
okay.
If in fact they are not using, for example, PFAS, that we find that in the initial testing that there is no PFAS being discharged.
Right.
That eliminates that as an ongoing requirement to test every year, because those tests, as you know, are very expensive.
Yes.
So that would change that amount that they would need to reimburse for testing. If we go through their process and you find that they're doing e-coating and they're using nickel and they're using, maybe potentially some solvents or whatever, those would become part of it, but it would not be, you don't have to test for every parameter. You look at what they exactly would have limits for. So part of the process, if you look at it, the maximum allowable headworks loading, that's the major part of that, is basically what type of waste stream does the township have without that industry? What are they contributing to the industry? What does that affect as far as the concentrations overall going into the lagoon site? How does that affect your biosolids? And what, if anything, would be passed through in your effluent? Because with the lagoon treatment system, you don't have a very advanced treatment system for removing certain things. So there's a higher likelihood that materials could pass through because of just the type of treatment system that you have.
Sure.
So that pre-treatment part that Mr. Boosterbarth referred to becomes even more critical.
Thank you. And Steve, thanks very much for your input.
You're
This is
welcome.
great.
I have one other question, just reading the write-up again. It says they voluntarily stopped sending their processed wastewater to the township sewer system. So my question is, they're still sending sanitary, understand that. But how did they separate that? Is everything from their process going into an external tank?
Yes.
Or has it been going into an external tank and then they used to be pumping that back into the sewer system?
I don't know if they were pumping it back into the system or if they put a tankage system in place, because like I said, all we've seen are line drawings, very simplistic line drawings of their process. If this goes into effect, then we're going to be looking at actual engineered site diagrams like you would for a site plan, where it
Right.
shows all the piping layout and exactly how that's being handled.
And
What
site-
we've got is very simplistic.
I'd be curious to
Site
understand how
visits.
they're separating that now from the
Yeah.
past. So.
But
you
more
can
than
get
just drawings, with all due respect, you'd also be doing site visits, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
This-
good.
There's gonna be,
So,
will be inspections that would be performed, both as an initial inspection and to verify exactly information, because obviously, at this point, you're going to go in and we're gonna actually, trace piping and see where it's going and
yep,
what materials are stored on site and, a lot of record keeping, all their safety data sheets, et cetera, and the volumes of material that are being, used on site would all have to be verified initially, and then every year as an inspection, a physical visual inspection and sampling inspection would be done 1 to 2 times per year at a minimum, as well as records requests from them for all their internal, if they have a treatment process, what their treatment process test results are, what kind of monitoring they're doing. Do they have an alarm system, say, for example? We recently dealt with a situation where there was a company that had an alarm system for their process, and on the weekend, the operator who was doing this, and this was the company's operator, not a wastewater operator, chose to just ignore those alarms and acknowledge them, and they discharged chromium to the waste stream. I'm assuming that person doesn't work there anymore.
yeah.
I don't know, but they actually had their system shut down. Once that was reported, the municipality actually shut them down for a period of several weeks until the investigation could be completed.
Ouch, devastating. Wow.
Any other questions?
Yeah, what's the action that we need to take here?
Well, we may need to have a motion to either implement or not implement this IPP.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's just to request a proposal,
A proposal,
a
right.
formal proposal,
Right.
because this is
Yeah.
just
So,
informational.
too loose.
I would,
And if, like I said, if you choose to request proposals from multiple firms, you can do that. You could authorize Ms. Klein to release a request for proposals or to solicit proposals, or you could just authorize us to prepare a proposal for the board's.
well, I think since F&V is
Yeah.
waist deep into the investigation for the PFAS, it would make sense to continue the investigation with this. So I would make a motion to request a proposal from F&V Operations to develop and implement an industrial pretreatment program for Oscoda Township.
Support.
Support, Cummings.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Westerbar. Roll call, please.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Westerbar?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed.
Yeah.
Next is the new police officer hiring.
So, you have a memo from Chief David. We had an interview on July 19th with a potential new police officer, Mr. Dwayne Meyer. He interviewed quite well. He's got a lot of experience previously in the military and 7 years with Oscoda County. So, Oscoda County.
Thank you.
So I would like to request, the chief and I would like to request a conditional hire pending passing a psychological evaluation and background check.
Any questions, comments?
Well, I might add that Jeremy and I talked about it before, because I'm quite happy. This guy's very well qualified. He spent many years in the military, and he's also a Purdue grad. So,
I noticed that also.
of course, you know where I'm going with that. I'm not going to be alone if this goes through.
I have to tolerate that in my family, but that's another story.
You have that.
Do I have a motion?
I would make a motion to approve hiring Dwayne Meyer to fill the vacant position with a tentative start date of August 15th, 2023, pending successful completion of all pre-employment testing and screening.
Support?
I have a motion by Mr. Sutton, support by Mr. Westerbar. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Westerbar?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Well, I don't know.
I just want to say it once, so I'm waiting
Yes.
for the pass.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Boiler up! We got
Motion
another
passed.
boiler.
Boiler up.
Oh, boy.
Motion passed. Next is the municipal service building revisited.
So, at our last meeting, I needed this retouched on because the point was not very clear of what needs to happen. So, yes, the report was received by the planning commission, but that report was for the planning commission, for them to decide what the next steps were. We didn't actually get that approval of what those next steps were supposed to be as far as a municipal services building. So I am bringing it back to get clarification for the subcommittee for the planning commission. And I'm still working on getting all the reports that Bob had, because I don't have that in a PDF. There are several. I have a PDF, but it's not the same thing that Bob has. So clarification on what you would like them to do would be greatly appreciated.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'd like to see a structural needs assessment be completed, because I know that in the past we said we were gonna do that.
Yes.
There's documentation to that, and I would like to see that done to the existing township hall.
I agree.
And expand that building and focus on that area.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, we've talked about
I
that
would
structural
like
needs
to-
assessment for quite some time now.
What come up at our special work session that we had about this was the actual motion that was made by this board, given the direction to the planning commission. So out of that discussion, now, should we be looking at, should the planning commission investigate a single floor building that would include administration, community center, police and fire? Should the planning commission investigate a multi-floor building that would meet those needs? Should the planning commission investigate options for multiple buildings, such as a police and fire, a public safety building, administration, or community center combination, or any combination thereof? Should the planning commission also investigate locations where the buildings could be located? The board would have to also allocate funding for where you want us to go with that. So if there's additional costs now for engineering and architectural and all of that, that's going to have to come back to the board to fund those projects.
Yeah.
So, but right now, the clarification would be, what exactly are we looking for? So at the last meeting that we talked, you took out the library, and a senior center was eliminated from that building. So now the question is, what should we be looking at?
Option B.
That would be investigate multi-floor building that would meet all of those needs, police, fire, administration, and community center.
Minus
I
the
support that
senior
motion.
center, minus the library, correct.
Yeah,
I thought that's what we
One
did.
building.
it is.
One building.
Yep, that's correct.
Yep.
Well, that was the
Right where it's
reason
at.
for, that was the reason for the structural assessment, because there
Yeah.
was no reason to structurally
Well,
assess a
planning
horizontal
commission-
growth.
Planning
It's vertical
commissions
growth.
are a little bit different because we like to address one thing, one part of the process, one thing at a time. So the first thing that we would like to know is what this board would like to see. Now you're saying one building, whether that be a single layer, single floor, or a multi-floor building, so that we can clarify that. You want one building, it could be either
And multi-story.
Yeah, multi-story.
multi-story, or is it just the multi-story?
It's not gonna fit where it's at if it's not a
Put an election room
multi-story.
in, you'll need
Well,
multi-story.
Yeah.
There was
I
that,
just,
yeah,
we need that clarification before we can continue.
Multi-story.
right, so the point
So we're
on that.
looking at,
So Bob, the point on that was that when Mr. Stalker was here, he had pointed out that there were a lot of people, or some people, whatever the number was, who had strong concerns about wanting to see us use the property to the south of the Township Hall because of the trees and the kind of park feel that that property gives the Township Hall. So the discussion was to go to second or multiple story, which is the reason why we were looking at an assessment. As for multiple buildings, it was discussed numerous times in the prior board that multiple buildings increases our overhead, and that we wanted to avoid that because, you know, we're not Bloomfield Hills. So we wanted to be efficient about it. And I don't know to what degree, we've already thrown a couple of the things off the list, so it certainly reduces our footprint needs. Yeah, so that was
This
the,
building
that's
would
what I
also
recall.
be accommodating for up to the next 10 years.
Yep.
So the modern technologies, so like a fire department would need drive-through, so they no longer would shut down the road to back their vehicles in. So those are the things that would be looking at.
Yep.
So, so that's the direction that we're going to go back to the planning commission with, is we want to look at a multiple-story building on the present site. And you know, if that's the direction that's coming here, then that's what gets taken back to the planning commission, and then we re-engage with the engineering to see how to accommodate those needs.
And the question is whether we can, not
Whether
how
we
to
can.
not how to
They can
force a
answer that.
square
So we're
peg
still
into a
dealing
round
on the
hole.
what,
Yeah.
okay, and not,
Yeah.
that's, you know, and you've already answered the where. You want it there. That's what I'm hearing right now. You want it in that spot.
If it can be done.
If it can be done, yeah, exactly.
I think
Yeah,
Ms. McGuire hit on it when, first of all, we have to assess the structural capability of the current building. Will it support multiple stories?
That's right.
Is
And all the
number
cinder
one.
blocks.
And then on top of that
they're old
is
cinder
there
blocks.
sufficient space there in the building to accomplish what we need to do? Because
So
that's part of the plan, that was what we commissioned the planning commission to do.
And that's what we're willing to do.
And
And what is needed, a clarification on the type of building that you're looking at. So we have the what and now the where. So we just gotta need to know if it'll work.
That's what we'd like you to tell us.
And that's what the clarification that the planning commission was looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Just to toss in a quick vision, it would be, I know that we're talking about multiple stories here, and you know, it's a prime spot right where we're at to build up, and I really think it would be cool to have the meeting room on the 4th floor so that we can see the lake and while we meet. Just because. Not saying it's a requirement, just tossing it out there for review.
Well, Mr. Freeman is helping us through that process, so I know his ears are catching everything that's being said right now, so.
Yeah, you could actually put that now for events if people need that.
Oh, I know, that's why I threw it out there, just so, you gotta plant that seed, you know.
Okay. Is that all the action is that all you need? now
That
for
was the action, we
for the
needed
planning
that
commission?
clarification of what
That's
the
easiest
next
thing all
process the planning commission is gonna take.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Next up is a letter of support request from MCOG.
So, MCOG is requesting a letter of support for the Round 2, Creating a Culture of Resilient Capacity 2023 grant. This grant will provide workshops for municipal employees and the public to help with damage caused by coastal flooding, that kind of thing. And because we are on Lake Huron, they are requesting a letter of support from the township.
Absolutely.
Where's your board?
Do we have a motion?
I would move to provide them their letter. The Michigan Coastal Management Program, and provide them a letter of support for the workshops that they're trying to put on in our township, so that our citizens can be educated about erosion from coastal waters.
To be drafted by Tammy.
To be drafted by the superintendent.
Support?
We have a motion by Mr. Spencer, support by Mr. Wistbar. Roll call, please.
Mr. Taser?
Yes.
Mr. Sutton, yes. Mr. Wurschbarth?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes, motion passed. That concludes our business that we have to transact. For. Next up is public comments. You don't need to fill out a card for that. Start over here on the left. Gentleman back there, do you have a comment you would like to make? In the center here? Anyone here? Yes.
Okay. I have a couple things I wanted to talk about. This past week, I went in and talked to Mr. Palmer, and I requested that Mr. Sutton come in and discuss some things concerning the social media, and he refused to come into the office while I was there. I kind of feel like he's running a page called We Are Oscoda. He is putting stuff on there that pertains to the township, like the Memorial Day Parade and election issues and stuff, and he is using his name as Josh Sutton, Oscoda Township Clerk. I feel like he should not be blocking and censoring people on that page. He's doing it to me, and I know he's doing it to Kelly Brown now. And from what I'm reading, when he goes on there and uses it as the clerk of the township, he is not supposed to be blocking and censoring people. The other day I was coming back from my mother-in-law's funeral, and I get a text on my phone that you have been blocked from We Are Oscoda. And I'm like, I haven't even been on there because I can't post on there. And now he's blocking me. What? I don't even understand what's going on with that. It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. I don't go on there and swear. I don't go on there and threaten people. I go on there and state my opinion, and that's all I've ever done. And for some reason, he's decided. So anyways, I went on my page, and I put some information about him refusing to talk to me. And I got a very interesting response from a guy that used to work for the Oscoda Township. And I'm not going to read it to you because part of it is kind of embarrassing, but I will email it to all of you. And I think it should be looked into because apparently this man is saying that under Oscoda Township time, Josh was doing a lot of things like working for Greenbush and doing stuff at the Oscoda Township office. So I will send that out to you. He says he has documentation to prove this, and I think it might be something that should be investigated. Okay, my other things. Let's see. A lot of this stuff, like with the water mains tonight that you guys were discussing, seems like that should have been figured out how that was going to be paid for before this meeting. Would have been nice to, know that beforehand. Tammy, when you're sitting over there and you're holding up a paper like this and mouthing to the board, I don't think that's really open meeting stuff. It doesn't seem like you should be able to talk to the board or whatever you were doing. So, we could see you doing that. So, let's see, there was a few other things. But anyways, my main issue is this is not going to go away. This needs to be addressed with Josh. Kelly and I are determined to figure out why he's running this page and blocking us and doing this stuff to, we're just trying to get some information out to the public. And a lot of things Kelly puts out there are just informational for public events and stuff, and they get refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the center here? Anyone over here on the left? Right. Okay. Board comments. Start with Mr. Cummings.
I have nothing to add. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good meeting.
Mr. Spencer?
We're not the Facebook police. Sorry. That's it. I'm good.
Ms. Wishbarth?
No, good meeting, and again, I'll be getting back to the board with some CLIB issues. Forthcoming.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear what you said. You're getting back.
I'll be getting back to the board with more of an explanation of the CLIB issues that are ongoing.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's the Cedar Valley.
Mr. Taser?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, wow, what a action-packed month in Oscoda. I mean, whoever knew Barbie would have took over the entire town. Balloons and big bees on buildings and dressing up. I never seen so much pink in my life. What a wonderful time. And the ball game yesterday was just out of this world. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I did get the two chiefs together to shake hands on a deal, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the firemen are going to be cleaning those police vehicles out there. And I can just picture a 4-inch water hose blasting everything off of those, because that's the way firemen work. I have a son that's a fire chief, so.
I hope I'm here Thursday so I can see it.
Yeah, that would be a wonderful thing. But I just want to go back in and say that this just goes to show you that what positive things can happen in a community when people put their minds together and work together to get things done. And this is Canoe Marathon Week, and it's going to be another action-packed week this week. I want to see this continue on year-round events, and I think we're heading in that direction. And thank goodness. Let's keep on going.
Ms. McGuire?
Well, I was going to mention the same thing about this week and all the events that are going on with the Canoe Marathon. They've added quite a few things. Behind Gilbert's, there's a bunch of different games and things, family events going on. And tonight was the blindfolded canoe race, which I'm really sad I had to be here instead of there, because I've participated every year but one. So really sad to miss that. It's a good time, and if you guys ever get a chance to do it, you should.
You paddle in that?
Every year I've paddled in
The
it.
blind leading the blind?
You got it.
As long as Josh and I are in the same canoe, that might be a problem.
Yeah, that would definitely be a problem.
Right. The cardboard canoe race, I believe, is Wednesday night, and just all kinds of different events happening. And if you've never gone to Grayling to see the start of the race, you should, because it's pretty amazing.
It is.
For sure.
And a dash for cash.
Oh, and Dash for Cash.
That
Yep.
is amazing how fast those guys can pedal those canoes.
Yeah. And music at the beach too on Thursday as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
music. A lot happening.
Well, I would just like to say I want to congratulate the police department on winning the guns and hoses. I wore my other shirt into the Township Hall this morning and was quickly greeted by the police officers who had the trophy and said, "You've got the wrong shirt on." But I have to get equal time to our fire department. I honestly thought the fire department was going to win based on that first game because they built up a huge lead in the first game. But hats off to the police department. They battled back and ended up winning that, and then winning doing the second game and scored more points. So they won the overall competition. And I would invite everyone out Thursday, Township Hall, to watch the fire department, as Mr. Taser indicated, to watch the fire department clean all the police cars, and not only our police cars, but the other police agencies, Forest Service, some others. I understand they're going to get their vehicles over to watch, so it should be, but all of this was in good spirits, and they raised, I understand, over $600.
Cool.
In collections for the fire department, for the dive team equipment. So it was a well-done event, well-attended, and both teams did admirably on the field of battle. So my hat's off to both the fire department and the police department. So with
And how
that-
about a big round of applause for Jessica Bravada again?
Yes.
And Rob.
And Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob Klink, put all this together.
Hey, Bill, what time is it on Thursday?
And will there be a wet t-shirt contest?
Oh,
Well, I don't know, I could probably wear my shirt if that interests you. I don't know.
behave.
I don't know what the time is. I don't think we heard that today.
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, but sometime Thursday.
Thursday.
I'll send out an email if I can nail it down.
If we find it, can we put it on the book, the digital reader out front? Stop by Thursday, 6 PM.
It's a great idea, great idea.
Maybe
Yeah.
somebody can make hot dogs.
And also, I wanted to mention, I had Ms. Klein include in the packet, under informational, the superintendent evaluation forms, just so I could talk a little bit about that. I brought copies for all the board members tonight, so that you have those, and I would ask that you get those filled out, and if you can, bring them back to me by the next meeting, or if not, the next meeting in August, so that we can get this wrapped up in a timely manner in September, which is when it should be done, so it's not dragged on for months and months. And get that wrapped up. So with that, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, everybody.